Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about how to set up your Illustrator file for a Universal Laser Cutter. So which one am I talking about? Talking about these types of laser cutters because that's the one that we have at school. And what we're going to be going through today is how to set up your file so that you're actually able to laser cut. Now, I'm pretty much going from the start of Illustrator, and I'm sure there's plenty of guides out there that's probably doing things much more efficient than me. But this is what I've been tinkering and learning over the last 1 year that I'm willing to share with you guys. Check the chapters for some quick tips. But yeah, apart from that, I'm assuming that you've never used Illustrator and you've just opened your Illustrator and this is what your starting page looks like. So without further ado, let's get started. Cool. So the first thing we want to be doing here is to click on New File right there. So when you click on New File, you're going to get a whole lot of presets that you're going to be working with. Now, I've kind of been tinkering with this enough, so I end up going towards the art and illustration part. And what I do is I pretty much change the points. Like right now, it's the units that it's going to be going in as points. I'm going to change that to millimeters. And of course, the laser bed that we're working with, particularly at school, the width of that is 810, and the height of that is 450. So I'm just going to change that to 810 by 450, and I want to have it in landscape mode. And I guess the most important thing is making sure that you actually click on the color mode, which is RGB. Now, it doesn't matter if you work on a different size, because we can still move it around later in the laser cutter, so it's not a problem. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the first step that you really want to do is make sure that you actually get the preset right and making sure that you actually have the color. And I think this is the main part that I keep saying to our kids is that, make sure it's in RGB color. And we're going to click create. And what should happen is you've got this big empty space that you can potentially work in. Now, a good way to check that you've chosen the right colors is simply by clicking on like any one of these, like a line segment or something like that. So you can just draw a line segment. But before you draw on it, what you could do is you can click on the stroke button here. If you click on it and if you go over to the red, and you can kind of see that it actually says RGB red. And if you go to the blue, it says RGB blue. And if you go to the black, it actually says, well, that's just black, so it's going to be nothing different. But yeah, the main key thing is that you want to be working with RGB red and RGB blue, because if it says, and sometimes you can make a mistake where you might have not, you might have chosen like CMYK, which means at the top here, it'll actually say CMYK/preview. Basically what that means is that the CMYK colors, well, our laser cutter is set up to recognize RGB colors, and I haven't figured out how to put the CMYK yet. So yeah, this is what it's going to do for it to work right now. So just making sure that it's in RGB red, RGB blue. The black, of course, always works. So now that we've got that color things kind of sorted out, a couple of things to actually worth noting is, so let's say, for example, we take this little tool here, which is going to be using to draw a straight line. So we've just drawn a straight line right there. This is your select tool. So if you want to select, I'm going to select it outside, but I want to select this particular line. So I've got to go on it to click on it. Otherwise, the other way that I could do is just kind of like select like a little draw, like a little square rectangle at the bottom here, and that actually selects it. Now, if you want to move it, you've actually got to click on the path, and then you will be able to move it, because if you click it anywhere else, you start creating, you click away from it. So it's another thing that's actually worth remembering, that you've actually got to click on the path. The other thing you'll notice is that right now it says stroke is in black. So basically that's the stroke, or in this case, it's the outline. And its thickness is 1. I want to change the thickness. So increasing that number, you're going to see that it actually increases quite a bit. And of course, you can always just double click and just type the stroke if you want to. That's another way that you could potentially do it as well. Now, a really good thing about the like aligning things is that like here, you've got a little align tool just to kind of position your little line in the center of the page. So we're just going to click on this. So that's your centering horizontal, and then you've got vertical align center. So that is that center part, that this little point is actually at the center of this entire board here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get another little rectangle. So I'm just going to click on this for a rectangle. And as you can see, just dragging along, I can actually create a rectangle. But if I hold the shift button, what happens is it actually ends up being a square. Same with the circle. So if you look at the ellipse tool there, when I click and draw, it's not really a perfect kind of circle. And you can kind of see that as I get close, you see those little two pink lines coming. But if you want to draw a perfect circle, just hold down the shift key, and straight away you can see that you're just going to create that perfect circle there. Cool. Now let's talk about the three main kind of colors that you're going to be working with. But also at the same time, like if I look at these three objects, they all have a black stroke for the outside, but I don't know what's happening inside. That's because if you go into the fill, right now it says no fill, so I'm just going to click on that. You can go red fill, you can pretty much choose whatever colors you want. But really, when we're actually using with the laser cutter, there's only three colors that we really look forward to, which is the black, the red, and the blue. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later. So what I'm going to do with this fill is I'm going to put that as black. And as for the stroke, I'm going to put that as a red for now. And you can kind of see there's a red stroke there. If you want to zoom in, you just hold down the Alt button, and you should be able to zoom in. And a really quick tip to kind of like go back to the original, what do you call it, the screen size. You just press Control 0, and that actually takes it back to your original full screen. So, if you like kind of like zoom it silly, then you just press Control 0 and it actually brings it back. And as I said, the other stroke, the other color that we work with is blue. So I'm going to put a little blue circle there, and I'm going to put the straight line here as just a red one. Yeah, and as I said to you guys, I'll talk to you guys later about those three colors and what they actually end up going to do. But yeah, let's say I want to change this circle. I'm going to put it blue, fill it with another color. Yeah, pretty much you can kind of like mess around with the colors later on. But like I said, when we're doing laser cutting, we're only focusing on three colors: blue, black, and red. Now, I guess, since we're actually here, I will actually show you guys what these three things are going to be doing. But what I will show you guys is something like this, so you get an idea of it, what those three things actually do, the three colors, why we actually go with those three colors. So a couple of things is like also quite useful little things to know is that when you can press you can use your normal Control C, Control V to copy and cut and paste. So here I'm going to press Control C, and if I press Control V, what it does is it actually pastes right in the center there. All right. Now let's say you don't want to actually keep on doing that. What you could also do is you could literally drag this circle here. Like, see what I'm doing? I'm just moving it here, and if you hold down the Alt button, what it does is it actually creates a copy of it. So if I let go of the Alt button, I'm moving the original. But if I hold down the Alt, then what it's actually done is it's actually created a copy of the circle. And I let go of the Alt button, and guess what? I've actually got two circles. I'm going to repeat that again. So you could actually hold down Alt and then move the circle like this. Or you could just move the circle and then hold down Alt, and your copy is going to be left behind there. Cool. So I've got these three circles at the moment, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe create like another little rectangle inside of it, not a rectangle, square. And I'm just going to kind of like drag this here. Let's just put that in the center of that. There we go. I'm just going to get rid of this. Let's try that Alt thing again. So I'm going to hold down Alt, and because I've selected both of those things, it's going to copy the entire image. But if I just select the circle, then it'll only copy the circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the circle and the square, and there we go. I'm done. So here is what I'm going to be doing. I am going to be cutting. So I have to actually go and get a cut of this so that I can actually show you guys what this looks like. But I will do that later on. So here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the circle as a red color. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it red, and I also I want to make sure the laser is going to cut it. So this is really important that I enter a font of 0.001 for the red stroke, because that is how fine the laser is, and that's how fine it'll actually cut it. Then I'm going to take the square, and I'm going to actually put it again to red, and I'm also going to make this 0.001. Basically what that means is I'm going to get a piece, and sometimes you won't be able to see it, but really if you actually select it, it's still there, but it's just so thin. So this is going to give me like a circle cut out with a square that's actually cut out inside as well. And I'll show you guys later when I manage to actually get this done. The second image, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the outside, I want to cut it. So I'm going to put it to red, and I'm going to put it as 0.001. And inside, I'm actually going to leave it as a blue. And if I ever want to put it as blue, then I'm going to put it at 0.03. So those are the only two numbers you need to know with the laser cutter. Is if you're doing red, you got to put it at 0.001. And if you're doing blue, you want to make sure that it's 0.03. Final one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the circle outside to be red, so that I'm going to cut out a piece. And 0.001, but this time I'm actually going to put a fill as black. So I'm going to actually fill that as a black, and I'm going to show you guys what the three different things are going to do. Basically what we call this is the black ends up being like a raster, which is like kind of like digs a black square out. The blue is like an etch, so it just does like a fine little line around the circle, inside the circle. And the red is like a pure cut. It literally just cuts the pieces out. So what I'll do is I'll probably have to go at some point to actually get these cut out, so I can actually show you guys what the three different things are.
Yeah, when you're in a rush, you just got to get things done through. But anyway, so here we go. So remember I talked to you guys about the first example that I showed you with the red line outside and the square being a red line. So this is what happens with the laser cutter. So red line actually cuts it out. And we also did a red and black. So with the red and black, obviously the red circle cut it out. Not red and black, sorry, red and blue. And you can see kind of here, it's almost like a very fine little etch that it does. That's what the blue actually does. And finally, when we had the squares colored, filled with black, what ends up happening is that, yeah, you cut it, but what it does do is like it kind of gives it like a little bit of a, it's almost like it dug the square out, is what I was trying to get at. And as you can see, it's like a couple of little settings I've been playing with, and I don't know, I can't tell if this one is deeper than this one here, but yeah, that's just something to keep in mind as well. So black is what you call a raster, so that's what it does. Blue is a little etch, so it's like a fine little vector that goes around. And of course, red is just a clean cut, like how we did in that example before.
Cool. The next part that we're going to be looking at is actually scaling up and scaling down an image. Now, I know that we've been working with the stroke of red. I'm just going to change the stroke to maybe 2 so that you guys can actually see what's happening here with these shapes. Now, the really cool thing about Illustrator is that, you know, it's incredibly powerful in terms of like you can place things exactly where you want it. So when you're actually laser cutting like a sheet, and let's say your sheet size is like 600 by 100, all right? So what you can then do is you can actually go into Edit Artboard, and so you can kind of see right now the width is set at 810 and your height is 450. Now let's say you got a art like a MDF sheet that's worth 600 by 100, then you would go 600 by 100. And you can kind of see straight away, okay, so these 3 pieces are not actually going to fit inside this particular width that you want to try and cut it in. So what I want to do is I want to try and scale it down. So when you're trying to scale it down, what you could do, there's like multiple ways you can do this. So the method that I'm going to show you guys is that, you know, it's again, you can literally just drag this corner and you can actually scale it down. But the problem is it's not scaling down uniformly. Like, you know, I think that's a really big pain. But what you could do is if you hold down the shift button then it's going to scale down quite uniform. Like it always scales down in uniform. But if you let go of the shift button, then it's going to like start doing like, really weird things, like that. So, and of course, don't forget Control Z is your friend. So you can always do that as well. Now, the other way you could also scale it down is right now, this this entire rectangle, this blue rectangle that you see outside here, those dimensions are actually given here as 490 by 161. Now remember, our height of this, our sheet we used was 600 by 100. So what we could do is we could actually change this height to 100. And that scales it down uniformly. And that's because I've actually clicked on this little button that says maintain width and height proportions. Now, if I didn't do that, so let's say this is switched off, and I click on 100, what happens is it kind of like, squeezes it down. So it's not really nice. So we're going to go Control Z, make sure that we lock the properties here, and then we're going to hit the 100, and boom, it's actually kind of like done it up. Now, I'm going to bring it down into the sheet. Let's say, like, you know what, I'm still not happy with that 100. Then what you could do, you could actually scale it down even some more if you want, maybe 295. And that's kind of like starting to work, right? But again, these are like, you can kind of look that these things are not all lined up together. So what you could do is you could select them individually, and you can kind of put them in the center if you want to of that particular page. Now, is it going to work? If it doesn't, let me just see. Yeah, see, this is sometimes I've seen this happen, right? You could select each individual item and click on center. And then I'm going to click on the square. What have I done here? I think I might have actually done a couple of, yeah, let's go back and try that again. So that, okay, let's see, we move that in here. And I want to move this circle to the center. And then I want to move that square to the center as well. And I'm going to kind of like repeat the process here, just to make sure that I want all those items in the center of it. All I'm doing is like just doing that align property, right? Now, at this point, obviously I don't want like if I actually use this sheet and I cut it out, I'm actually wasting this space here, and I'm also wasting space here. So I really want to move it to either to the right hand side or to the left hand side. So I could click on this right here, horizontal line right. Now, if I do that, what happens is everything gets moved like this. Like basically all of the things are actually put together. So here's where the group actually comes quite handy. So I'm going to select everything. I'm going to group it. And then once I group it, now if I click on right, that's going to move to the right or left. But if I had it ungrouped, then what's going to happen is all of them are going to like bunch up together. So that's something that's worth remembering. It's like when you want to move like a whole bunch of things that are stacked behind each other or just on top of each other, you can group them, and then you should actually be able to move it around. Let's say you want to move it to the top corner, then you could also do it like, you can click on vertical align top. That actually moves this little thing to this corner of the rectangle. It moves it to the top right corner. Yeah, so it's just like something else that's quite handy for scaling up and down. The other thing that's quite useful is to know is this little grid right here. This little grid right now, you can see that I've got this point in the middle here, and you can actually see this X and Y coordinate, 448 and 472. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the top left just so you guys can actually understand. So that's top, and I'm going to move it to the left. So if you remember, this little sheet that we were working with was actually 600 by 100, right? So it was actually 600 width and the height was like 100. So if I was to convert this into like a scale, then what happens is like this corner point here, if I actually click on this reference point to the top left, you can actually see that it's 0 and 0. And so if I move this to here, this point here would be 600 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the right, but my reference point, it says 296. The 296 is actually right about there. So if I click the reference point to the top right, it's going to come up with 600 0. So the 600 0 is there, and then 600 100 is at the bottom of this MDF sheet. So if I actually move this down, and if I click on the bottom reference point right there, as you can see, that's actually 600 100. So it's just another thing that's quite handy when you're trying to position things exactly on a cardboard so that you're not wasting material. That's something that's actually worth remembering as well, that you can actually move to literally like every millimeter. So that's how accurate this thing, Illustrator, ends up being. Cool. And if let's say I want to go back to my artboard, my original artboard, I click on Edit Artboard, and it was 810 by 450. There we go. And right now, because I moved it to 810 by 450, I'm going to show you guys this. Like if I go back to the reference point at the top left, and let's say I'm going to move it. There we go. That should now come as 0 0. But if I don't want to, I can always do this as well. I can just type up the letters, and that actually moves it as well. So let's say I want to move this 100 mils on the x-axis, then I click on 100. Basically, that's moved from there to there 100. Now let's say I want to drop it about 200 on the y-axis, then that corner has dropped by 200 on the y-axis. So it's just something that you need to keep remembering, because if I click on the reference points, it changes. So you notice how the middle changes, and then the bottom reference point changes as well. So that's just like a really quick tip for scaling up, scaling down, and movement of your object around a board that you're working with. Like for example, like acrylic always comes in 300 by 300 board. I mean, that's the one that we end up getting. So if you think about it like this, and let's say you want to do a 300 by 300, now you can kind of see this is not actually going to fit in. So you're going to try and figure out a way of like, how can I set this up so I can actually get the best use of the material, and see straight away, like doing like little adjustments, you can kind of see, yeah, this is how I actually move it to the best, so that I can actually use this, get the maximum use of this particular sheet with. Cool, and I think that's pretty much covers like scaling up, scaling down an item, and I use the width and height a lot because I just have like a measuring tape with me, and I measure like how big I want to make something, and then I'm constantly like tinkering with this here, rather than trying to go, oh, am I going to be able to fit it using these, like kind of like, am I going to scale it up and down here? I hardly use that. I pretty much go straight to the width and height, because I know exactly what width and height I want the cut to be, and I can adjust it pretty accurate as to what I want. The next part that we're going to be covering is Pathfinder. Now, Pathfinder is actually, I'm still learning it, but look, I've kind of tinkered enough with a few things, and I'm sure if you look up on YouTube, you're going to find like a ton of more things on Pathfinder. So what we're going to do with Pathfinder is I'm going to kind of work with these same shapes here. And I'm just going to work with black strokes and fill to be no fill for now, so you can kind of see what the things that we're going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the square and the circle like this, and I'm going to select both of those two shapes. And Pathfinder ends up being on this side here. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's actually work with a big board. So I'm going to go to Edit Board, click the width to 810 by 450. There we go. That's nice there. And let's just do a whole bunch of this, right? Oh no, I'm going to use the Alt function, guys. So holding down the Alt button, I can actually select 2. I'm going to hold the Alt button to get 4, and then I'm going to get like maybe another 4 to work with. All right, there we go. Let's try these different things. All right. We are going to, let's actually color them. Should we color them black? Nah, that's fine. Let's just see what it does, right? All right, so the first, when you click on this Pathfinder and you click on the little expand button, You got like a whole bunch of things that you can actually work with. So we're going to do each one of them so you get an idea of what happens. So the first one is like unite. So when I click on unite, that's what happens. It basically just connects those two shapes. Next, we're going to try this, which is click to minus front. I think the square was in the front. So if you want to send the square to back, you click on it, and then there's a little arrange button, and you can send it to the back, which means if I go minus front, because the circle's on top of the square, it's going to subtract the square, and we end up with that. But let's leave it as it is, and try this one. Okay, because that is minus front, because later on there is a minus back. So if we do minus back, you're actually going to end up with that. So those are the two different ways you can kind of work around with that. Have I got enough here? Have I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I probably need a couple of more. Let's just grab a couple of more quickly. All right, so what about this one? This is click to intersect. There we go. That's actually looking at the intersection of those 2 points. Then we've got, what do we got? Click to exclude. So here, it's what's actually happened here is there's actually 2 pieces. And you kind of have to ungroup it. But when you ungroup it, you can kind of see what's going to happen here. See how it's like 2 pieces. So it's basically taken that inside piece out. But what also happens is that when you generally tend to do that, they tend to be grouped together. So what you want to make sure is like just click on ungroup, because when you click on ungroup, you can kind of separate your 2 pieces away from each other. What was that one? That was exclude. The other one is divide. Now with divide, what happens is pretty much it cuts them into 3 pieces, and I'll show you guys. So we're going to click on divide. Once again, it's all going to be grouped, so we're going to click on ungroup. Because when we click on ungroup, what happens now is we've actually got 3 pieces, and I hope you guys can see that, right? There we go. So it actually divides it into 3 separate pieces, and you can kind of like mess around with whichever piece you want to work with. All right, that's another one that you tend to I tend to use as well. Trim. I never understood how to do this one. Please select one or more filled parts. Okay, let's try this because I never hardly use it. But let's go put this as black. Let's put this as red. And just see what it does. I might be doing something completely wrong. Trim. Oh, what did it do? I don't know what exactly it did, but let's see. Trim. Do you ungroup it? Okay, so it's pretty much similar to what we did. No, we didn't actually get anything like this, did we? Okay, well, that's what it does. I guess it just separates the square from the circle. Okay, all right, I guess that's trim. Let's have a look at the next one. What do we got? We've got merge. 2 or more filled or overlapping parts. Okay, fine. Let's try overlapping then. Let's go black and put this as red. Let's see what happens. What happens if I do merge? Okay, nothing. They've just ungroup. Okay, so it's basically just like a, I guess it's a version of trim. But like with merge, I know that I've done some things with, what do you call it? Circles. Not circles. I've done, when do I use merge? I've done it with something. Maybe when I do some designs later on, it might pop up. All right, what's the last one we've got? We've got crop. Okay, that just destroyed everything. Oh no, you've got something there. Have you? Yeah, not sure. I think that's something that you might have to have a look at it, guys. So I'm not sure what it. Some of the ones that I always mess it up, but as I said, Control Z. The main ones that I tend to use are the Pathfinder. I use that quite a bit for designs, and that's quite handy. And the other one that I tend to use is like Divide. Those 2 things are pretty handy when we're actually doing some laser cutting. Yeah, I'm trying to think about merge. I know I've used it quite recently, and as I said, like I just stopped playing around with it. But when it comes to making tutorial videos, I'm like, ah, damn, what's that tool? What does it do? And I'm like, I know when to use it. I just, it's funny, right? Like, yeah, it's just so many things that's happening here. Yeah, perhaps I think maybe have a look at another YouTube video for this, like just what it means for using the merge tool. Cool. So that pretty much covers Pathfinder. And I guess the reason why I like Pathfinder so much is because like you can get some really complicated shapes quite quickly. Like let's say let's just put a couple of things in here like this. So what you could do is you can pretty much select all of those things and you can click on divide. And once you click on divide, then you click on ungroup, and what you have is, you can kind of like take each of those pieces separately. And that's the cool thing about divide, because it actually breaks it into each of those into like those how many of the pieces that you divided into. So as I said, I tend to use that quite a bit. But yeah, something like this, if you actually do combine, then that's what you're going to end up with. But yeah, I mean, that should kind of get you guys on at least on a path to get started. But yeah, pretty much that covers kind of like combining shapes with whatever shapes that you have. I guess later on when we start importing images, which is going to be next. Yeah, it is next, where I'm going to show you guys how to get images, and then we'll show you guys how to do the combining a little bit more. So let's get on with the next part. So with the next part, what we're going to be doing is that when it comes to laser cutting, most of the time, kids come and say to me like, "Oh, look, can you cut me like I don't know, like a dolphin, for example, or like who was it? Somebody came and said, "Oh, look, we need some clouds cut out," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that's great." But the problem is like, well, which cloud? There's like so many clouds. You can sit there like trying to design your own cloud. But what you could also do is you could actually go grab a image from Google. You could actually trace it, and by tracing it, what happens is that you can actually show it how to cut out. So we're just going to go into Google. We're going to go into images, and here's a cloud right now. Right now, a couple of things about the laser cutter is that the laser cutter works in something called vector, and I know I did not talk about it till literally now, and there's a reason why. All right, so let's actually take this particular cloud here, for example. We're going to copy this image, and we're going to put this in. We're going to put this in Illustrator. Now, what happens is this, and I think this is the part that's really important, which sometimes people kind of get kind of confused with. Um, the laser cutter actually deals with vectors. Vectors are like lines. It's how do I, it's. I'll show you guys how it works. All right. So I'm going to take this line here. Actually, I'm going to take a better one. Let's do this. I am going to take a star. There we go. Cool. So I am going to grab this star here, and I'm going to copy this image, and I'm going to paste it here. Oh, that's not going to work. Let's try this one then. Sometimes nope, that's not going to work as well. Talk about fail. What can we do? What can we do? Can I just copy this image? It's learning time. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna hold down the Shift button and I'm gonna make it bigger. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a star right next to it as well from Illustrator. So you can kind of see there's a star tool. So I'm just gonna create a little star here, and I'm gonna move this guy right next to this vector, and I'm gonna make this. I want to fill this to black. Okay, so now I'm gonna fill this to blue actually, so that you guys can actually see the difference as what happens between the two stars as I zoom in. So the black star here is just an image, it's a pixel image, while the blue star here is actually a vector image. So what does that actually mean? the best way to explain it is if you actually start zooming in, you can kind of see the black star has like fuzzy edges, while the blue star looks fairly solid. Now I'm going to zoom in quite a bit, and you can start seeing how the black star is actually pixelated. In fact, I should probably move this a bit closer so that you guys can actually see the difference between the two. So I'm going to zoom into this corner right here. And regardless of like how much, like how deep I go, what happens is that black star is always going to get pixelated, but the blue star, I can just keep going, and it's always going to be sharp. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like I could go zoom in as much as possible, and you can kind of see it here at the bottom. Like if you guys have a look at it, I've zoomed in like that's the max zoom right there, which is like 64. What is it? 64,000? Yeah, 64,000 zoom. But like when I go to like that, that's 50% view. So that's what I mean by like the vector is like a sharp image, and it follows like it's pretty much based on graphs. So that's how accurate it is. But an image that you copy from the internet, it's not a vector. It's actually like a pixelated image, and it's going to lose quality as you zoom in. And so let's say I take these two images, and in this one, if I actually print this out, it's going to do what a raster does. So it's just going to like dig out a star. But in this one, it's going to, this is blue, so I'm just going to change it to black, but the stroke, I'm going to change it to red. In fact, I'm going to change it to just no fill. Basically, no fill, no fill. There we go. So in here, because it's colored red, and once I change that size to 0.001, it will cut out a star. But in this case, it will not cut out a star. So what we need to do is we actually need to change this star into a vector if you want the laser cutter to actually cut it out. So that's what we're going to be doing here, and that's the shortcut I'm going to be showing you guys how to do. Basically, it's a long-winded way, and I know I spent 5 minutes talking about it, but people need to understand that if you want to use the laser cutter, you got to be working with vectors and not in pixelated images. So we're going to click on this image, and the cool thing about Illustrator is that the AI is smart enough to actually kind of go, yep, I can do something called an image trace right there. So I can click on this image trace, and I click on default. And basically what it's done is now it's actually changed this image into a vector. So let's actually take this blue triangle, blue star. I'm going to put it in that corner there as much as I can. And I'm going to zoom in now in these 2 points. And you can see the difference of that black star. The black star now is as sharp as the blue one was. So basically, that's what an image trace does. But the problem with image trace is if I move this, I'm going to move this blue star out. You can kind of see. So that's by itself. But if I move the black star, it's also, the image trace is also trace that white background. So a really good thing to do is I want to get rid of that white background. So there's a button called here, expand. So you click on expand, and you click on Y. It's just a magic tool like Y, and I think the magic tool is right here. So you can click on the white part of it and then press delete, and it's going to delete that white part of it. All right. So basically, the steps is if you've got to, what is it? You've got to expand. So you're going to click on expand. You could ungroup it if you want. That's like an extra step. You could ungroup it. And then you should be able to like take the black star out. And so you've got a negative space. That's another way you could do it as well. Like there's a couple of ways of doing this. I tend to use the what do you call it? The Y button, which is the magic wand tool. Click on the white area and just delete. And I've got those two kind of shapes that I want to work with. Now, you guys would have noticed that when I try to copy this image and paste it, let's see, I ended up with like a black screen. And if I try to do an image trace, yeah, nothing, that's just this, there's nothing there. It's a black image, right? So when you're actually looking for images, like there's a lot of sites that actually give free vectors for for personal use. So, I mean, it's like you kind of have to go like, I mean, Adobe has some vectors that's already there, but what you could also do is I tend to do what I tend to do is like I look for like so let's say I look for star vectors. In fact, when I'm looking for images, I look for vector shapes, and like it depends on which one you use. Like some people have like free use for like personal use. Some people have like you've got to sign in. So there's like sites like Vecteezy, Vectorstock, and whatnot. So sometimes like when I'm in a rush, like like let's say I want to do the OJC logo as a vector. I simply look through here and I'm like, oh, yep, that looks good. I'm going to copy that image there. Um, let's go paste. Quick little image trace, default, and there's my logo, which is a vector, which means like now I want to cut this out. So what I'm going to do is expand. I'm going to click on the magic tool, which is Y. Click on that black area. I'm going to get rid of it. Now you might be like, oh, where did it go? Well, guess what? It's still there, but it's just with a fill and a stroke. So I'm going to change that stroke to red and the fill to no fill. And when I change this to 0.001, I'm going to have this our school logo actually cut out. That's like a quick kind of like lazy way of doing it. Now that quality of this, you can see it's not as good. It's, if you think about it, our school logo doesn't actually look like this. That's because I chose a really poor quality. So had I chosen this image, let's try this image here. I'm going to put it right next to each other, an image trace. So it was the same image, but instead of the big image, I took the small one. And I'm going to click on expand, and I'm going to magic tool, delete that black area. You can kind of see it's there. Change that to red, and you can see the difference between the two. So you can see that there's a clear difference between the two. Actually, no, I'm going to change that back to 1 so you can kind of see this logo. It's actually poorly traced, but this one is a little bit more sharper. So when you get like big images, it's better to get like big high quality images to kind of like trace, to have a play around with, rather than take that little image that we did originally. And also just remember that like majority of the images that you're going to be working with, it's ends up being copyrighted images. So just check that before you use that particular image, before you do an image trace on it, like you check the copyright, whatever the licenses are. But as I said, like for personal use, most of the time, if you're using it for your own project or like your own background for I don't know, for your school thing or something like that, it should be, yeah, should be all right. But again, check. I always check. And again, like the cool thing about this is that now that we've actually traced it, if I actually take it out, you can see that it's in white, the fill. I'm just going to change it to black. And because it's in red, it'll cut out the logo, and it'll also like do the etch of it inside of it. So, you can actually kind of do lots of variations with that as well. So pretty much that's copying images from websites. And I guess there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the pen tool, which I will kind of mention in the next section. So yeah, so that's pretty much tracing images to work with. Now, sometimes you will not be able to trace images. Basically, some images, depending on, and I'll show you guys what I mean by like, say, for example, let's say, I don't know, like horse. I don't know why I'm thinking of horse vector, but like some vectors, like the way they've done it is that it's actually quite hard to trace them. So say, for example, like let's say I take this horse right here, they've kind of put like little bits of it. So if I try and copy this image, just to show you. So this one actually comes out nice, but like maybe this is not the one I want to show. Let's see. I'm trying to find something that I can show. I don't think I'm going to be successful. Let's try this one here. If I do an image trace for that, there you go. See what happens. Like, so sometimes the images, like they're too, if it's not off high quality, when you try and run like an image trace, it doesn't even look like a horse. So it's a bit of playing around to do with, but yeah, depending on which image you're working with, just run it a few times just to see if you're happy with it before going on to using something. Yeah, and also check again, as I said, check the creative license. Some of them, as I said, are free. Like you could go like, let's see what this one is. So if I click on visit, some will say, okay, so this is like $32 onwards. Yeah, no, thank you. So we're not going to be using this one. But if you go something like Etsy, you've got to pay vector stock. Um, what have we got? Standard license, paper image. So again, just check, guys. That's all I'm going to say with your images, where you're going to be using it. Um, I think I've talked enough about this, so let's actually move on to the next thing, yeah? Cool. So the next tool that I've kind of been tinkering with recently that I found quite useful, well, I've actually used this before. Like I've used the curvature tool before, but it's the pen tool. So one thing that I was trying to figure out the other day was like, I wanted to create a triangle, right? And I'm like, where? Okay, I can see rectangle, I can see ellipse, I can see polygon. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll get the polygon. I'm going to draw a polygon, and I'm like, well, that's a hexagon. I want to create a triangle. Okay, oh, here we go. There's a little plus and like a little diamond little thing here. Okay, so I take it apart, and I've got a triangle here. Great, I've got a triangle. Okay, I can rotate it. I can rotate it around the center. So if I click on the reference point to center, just something else to keep in mind is then it rotates around the center. And if I hold down the shift button, it goes in like 45-degree angles. But if I click on the corner as a reference point, then it's going to rotate around the bottom right corner. So if you want to have a look at that, at least I thought I did, but it's rotating from somewhere. Oh, no, it's not doing that. Okay, maybe I've messed up somewhere there. Anyway, what was I going to say here? Okay, we wanted to actually talk about the curvature point. It's just the point that I like. So when I click on the, no, what did I say? I was going to create a right angle triangle. I wanted to create a right angle triangle. And I'm like, okay, how do I move this? I'm trying to move this. Okay, that curls it. That's not what I want. Do I try and move this little center point? That's not working. So yeah, I was getting frustrated. I was like, how do I create, like, let's say I create a rectangle. I'm going to create a rectangle, and I want a right angle triangle that goes like this. That's all I want. And I later on found out that you can actually use the pen tool, and you literally take this pen tool, you go to the corner that you don't want, and if you notice it, like, and I guess it's kind of hard to see. Right now, at the bottom right of the pen tool, you can see a little star. How do I actually do this? Like, I hope you guys can see it there in the middle of the screen. There's a pen, and to the bottom right, there's a little star. But if I go next to the point, it changes to a minus. Boom. There's my triangle right there. And if I go to this point, minus, it's now going to go into a straight line. And if I go to this point and minus, okay, nothing happens. But yeah, pretty much that's what that little pen tool kind of did. Now, the other cool thing is, let's say I want to get that pen tool, and I'm going to kind of create like a funny looking shape. Like, let's say I do something like this. There's my right angle triangle, but like, no, let's do something like that. And I'm going to join it back. There we go. I'm going to join it back. Now, the other part that's really cool is like the curvature tool, because now what I can do is I can click on the curvature tool, and I can go to each individual point, and I can decide whether it's going to be a sharp corner, or if I double click it, make it into a curve. This is a sharp corner, or double click it, and it's going to turn into a curve. And I was like, this is pretty cool. Double click it, double click it. There we go. I've got a little Pac-Man coming very shortly. Actually, no, I want this to be sharp, and I want this to be sharp. So Pac-Man has got his like mouth open. Now let's say I want to add like another point. So I just click on it. See how the little pen tool now changes to like a little plus? Because the moment I do that, I can kind of bring it down. I want to move this up like this. Okay, now I want it to be a sharp one, and it could look like that. Or I want it to be a curl. So it's incredible control that you can actually end up doing. So let's go back to what we were talking about before, which was the clouds, right? And so I'm going to pick up this clouds image. let's say, let's take this image. Beautiful, beautiful set of clouds here. I'm going to take this image, I'm going to paste it there, image trace. Let's go default. Yeah, that, it's reverse of it. So I'm going to expand, magic tool, delete the black, and I'm going to put like a black. Oh, that's not exactly what I want. Let's go to cloud vector. Okay, so we've got a few little options here, right? So let's actually see what we can do. Okay, well, we're going to grab this one here. Copy image. Now, and I guess this is something that I wanted to talk to you guys about is like, again, I could just run an image trace on this, but you know what? Like, this is probably somebody's work, but I want to try and learn how to create something like this, right? So what I could do is I could do a trace over it. So a trace over it is basically taking the curvature tool and putting a point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've created these 8 points, right? Now the bottom 2 points I want it to be straight. So I'm going to double click it, and pretty much I've got my cloud there. But it doesn't look very pretty, so I'm going to add another point here, so to bring it around like that. I'm going to add another point there, and maybe click another point, and I'm going to move it up to the edge, click another point here. Maybe I want to put this as a sharp one. There we go. Let's delete that image that we want. It's close enough, it's close enough to work with that. Let's actually put that as a black stroke and put that as white fill, and maybe change the thickness to like, I don't know, 5. There we go. So maybe we want that to be like a sharp corner. So I'm going to go back to that curvature tool, click on this, and just change that into, double click on it to actually make it. So remember double clicking? If I double click it, it's smooth, or double click to make it sharp. And there we go. There's my cloud vector right there. So, you don't really need to like always kind of like, you can run like a manual trace on top. The other way you could have done it is like stack a whole bunch of circles together. So I would have done something like this, like, okay, here's my rectangle. Let's say we're going to put like a whole bunch of circles. I'm going to put like a circle there, a circle there. Let's just select all of these guys and make sure that they're in black because we can't actually see where they are. Maybe like that. And perhaps put another circle here like this. Or maybe we should actually bring it down. But you know what? Let's just put another circle like that. And see what happens if I actually just go Pathfinder and combine it all. Okay, you start getting some weird shapes. That's another way you could actually do this as well. So, and then if you want to adjust it, so you can actually click on the curvature tool, go back to this image. I'm like, well, I don't really want this point, so I can click on that point and just delete. Click on this point here, and I can delete. I don't like this point. I'm just going to delete that. That's like too curly, like maybe like, yeah, let's do something like that, and maybe get rid of that little point. Yeah, not exactly. It's a pretty ugly looking cloud, but you know what? It's all right. It's pretty much learning, right? So it's kind of like messing around and learning with it. So I guess if we go back to like images that you want to kind of like turn around and play with, like let's go back to free flower vector. I don't really want to work with colors, right? I want to work with black and white for laser cutting. It's just much easier. So let's say I want to take this little image here. It's a free file. I'm going to copy it. Let's put that there. So you can kind of see it, like, look, it's quite fuzzy. So we're going to run an image trace on it. There we go. That looks kind of cool. But I feel like I need to make some changes, especially here. So you can kind of see as you go in, you want to get rid of that little piece there. So we're going to click on expand. and we're going to click on Y, select that white part, we're going to delete it. And now when I click on the black part, the whole image is selected, right? Like everything is selected. And if I try the curvature tool, I can then go to the individual piece right there and see these 2 points. It's almost impractical to have that. So I might just get rid of that. So I could just get rid of it straight away. Let's have a look here. I don't really like this. I probably would like this to come a little bit more like a curl. So I could just adjust, just moving it. So if I do Control Z, that's what it looked like. By simply just dragging it a little bit, I can kind of like curl it out a bit more. And even here, I don't like this sharp corner there. So I click on it and then just double click, but then that's going to have an impact on it. So let's see, is that looking all right? Or you could just get rid of this completely, but then that's going to have an effect on that. So yeah, it's pretty much like you can play around with it because you can add as many points as you want on that line, and you can manipulate it as many times as you want as well. Yeah, that looks all right. Might actually get this guy out. And now, you know what? Let's just go back. Yeah, I think I'll leave it like that. So yeah, you can actually run an image trace and then like kind of change things around to your liking because it might not be as good. Like see this square kind of like blocky finish. I might just kind of like bring it around a little bit. Now, what you'll notice is like right now, this is not actually moving freely, partially because I've got it set up. There we go. It's on snap to pixel, but like I think it's just yeah. You could like snap it around, but like but let's actually add another point. Yeah, let's get rid of that snap to pixel. That's much better. So you see, like sometimes I've like left that little snap to pixel on, which actually has an effect, on how you actually change this. You could also lock a point. I always forget which key it is. Is it Alt Shift? It's something that you guys might need to have a look again. Let me just have a quick look. Anchor point tool, that's the one. So I could click on it, but is that what I wanted to do? No, that's not what I wanted to do. I can't remember, guys. Sorry. I think it's something that we just have to come back later on, and maybe if I find it, I will put that up again. How to lock that thing so that it doesn't actually move along. Yeah, I think I might have kind of played around with it a bit before, but it's like I'm trying to figure out. I think the anchor point tool just, yeah, that's really weird. It's something I used to tinker with before, but obviously I sometimes I don't use certain things, and I'm like I completely forget about those things, about what that actually that tool does. Anyway, guys, so yeah, so that's pretty much how you can actually modify images if you don't like something and you want to change something in it. Like even here, that corner is just a little bit too sharp. I could just turn it around like that so it's a bit more smoother. Yeah, it was just a simple matter of selecting the tool and then clicking on curvature tool to change it into a sharp corner or into a what do you call it, a curve. So just to quickly show you again, so here's my star. If I double click that, it's going to kind of end up looking something like almost like a flower shape or like a starfish. Ooh, this is quite interesting. What does this do? There we go. Nice little pentagon little flower right there. Cool. Yeah. So that's pretty much how you kind of like mess around with changing images, like changing the vectors of those images. The next part that we're actually coming up to is probably one of my favorites because it is to do with radials and repeats and pattern repetition. So let's have a look at this particular little pentagon that we've created with this circle thing, right? Now I could actually do it another completely different way. So what I could do is I could take a little ellipse, and I'm going to click on this ellipse like this. And what I can do is I click on Object, and I go down to Repeat. And the pattern I want to do is radial, and this is where things get really cool. So when I click on radial, what it does is it actually repeats the same pattern X number of times. Now, if you go down to the repeat options, you can kind of see the patterns at 8. If I want to increase the pattern, what I could do is just drag this little arrow that's on the next to it, and I can just increase it how many other times that I want. I could adjust the radius, so I could actually bring it all together, or take it all out, or just change it up into whatever I feel like. This is like, so much fun in terms of if you want to try and create like really interesting patterns. All I did was I just took an ellipse, right? But like, I'm gonna leave this guy out here for now. I'm gonna take the curvature tool, and I'm gonna do just something like this, like just a really weird curve. I'm gonna select it, and I'm gonna go Object, Repeat, Radial. Yeah, and you're pretty much gonna end up getting something like this. But when I rotate it and start kind of like blowing it up, it's just quite neat where you can end up doing the designs. You can actually work on it if you want to, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Um, where's that little white dot? There it is. So I can bring it in, take it out, and kind of like just, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, do whatever I want with it, really. So pretty much radial patterns you can actually do with any vector. So I've left this little flower here, and what I want to do is I'm going to go Object, and I want to create a path. No, I want to repeat it. So radial pattern. There you go. You are going to end up with some really funky looking designs there. I can space it out a bit if I want to, and I can rotate it. Can just kind of like really get quite creative as to what I want to actually do with it. So that's pretty much the radial patterns. You could also repeat things in another way, which I'll show you guys. I'm gonna kind of like come back with this. I still love this thing, right? Like go repeat radial. Let's leave it right there. Where's the other one that we had? Oh, no, it keeps disappearing. Let's try Alt drag. And we're going to go Object, Repeat, Radial, right? Now, the other thing that you can also do is, which is quite useful if you want to start repeating a particular pattern in a way. So let's say I'm going to I want to create a little triangle. What are we going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Polygon. And we're going to reduce this to a triangle. That's good enough. That's 100 things. I want to repeat it on a vertical path or a horizontal path. So what do I mean by that? Let's just get rid of all of these guys. Now, before you actually go this to the laser cutter, I'll show you guys a couple of steps first, and then after that, I'll show you how you can actually set it up so that the laser cutter actually understands what to do. So we're going to go into Effect, and where is it? Distort and Transform. And there's something called Transform. Now this, I really enjoy this because like you can pretty much manipulate whatever you want with this shape in whichever direction you want, and also size as well. So let's say I want this triangle and I want like 3 copies of this triangle. So I'm going to put down 3 copies. Right now, all 3 copies are like actually placed on top of each other. But let's say I want each of the triangle to be moved horizontally. See what happens. Like, look at that. You can pretty much control exactly what you want to do with that kind of shape. Like, like I think you can kind of see like I've created like a weird Christmas tree right there. But let's say I do want to create a Christmas tree. That's a great idea. Yeah, where did I come up from? So we're going to rotate this, and let's say I want to create a Christmas tree with this, right? So I'm going to go into Effect, and I'm going to click on Distort and Transform. I'm going to go to Transform. So basically, it's going to get bigger. So let's change that to a bit of green, get that festive spirit going there. Well, I don't even know why I'm doing this. It's freaking January right now, but you know, it is the best kind of way to show how this actually works. So I want about maybe a 5-tier Christmas tree, and I want it to like, so it's going to be moving down. Is that enough? There we go. That looks about enough. But the problem is all the sizes are the same. So I can actually increase its scale as it goes vertically. No, that doesn't look too good. Let's just make that back to 100. Maybe it's the horizontal one that I've got to do. Okay, let's try that. There we go. Look at that. So horizontally, it's kind of like going across, but let's make that 117 in the vertical as well, just to see what it does. It's doing something like that. So, you know, as you can see, it's kind of like a little bit of tinkering to do. And I think like when you do that tinkering, eventually you'll start seeing what you could potentially end up with the design. So even here, like moving those reference points, you get to see like different effects of it. I love having the preview because it always shows me what it is that I'm doing when I actually mess around with these things. Yeah, so it's another thing to kind of keep in mind that you can actually use that as well. Now, when we're sending this to the laser cutter, and I'm going to look at these 3 particular images right now. The problem is when I click on this and I say, okay, I want this to be black and I want the stroke to be red. Now, as you can see, what's happened here is if I send this to the laser cutter, it's going to cut this triangle, then it's going to cut this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. That's not good for me. Let's click on this one. And if I click on the stroke and I change it to red, basically I'm just going to get like a shred of cardboard that's actually cut out. Same with this. If I change this to red, I'm going to get like a whole bunch of rings that are actually cut out. And that's not good for me. So what I want to do is I want to figure out how I can actually combine all of the shapes. So if I click on this and I go, well, I can't actually combine it. Because usually Pathfinder is actually here. If I try and select the whole Christmas tree, it's only going to select that part. And I guess this is the important part about repeating patterns and radials, is what you need to do is you always have to expand the shape. So you could do it right here in expand shape in this little side panel, or you go into object and you can click on expand appearance. There it is. Now it's given like a whole bunch of triangles. Now I should be able to select all the triangles and click on Pathfinder combine. There you go. There's my Christmas tree right there. Likewise, with this design here, again, I've got to do the same thing. I've got to go to Object, Expand, and it's going to ask me what I want to do. I'm like, yeah, this part I'm still kind of learning, but you know what? Just do the whole thing. But the issue is it's still going to cut up into red little pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on Pathfinder, and it's going to combine all of that. Now, if I actually cut this, theoretically, all of the black should be connected except for these little red rings outside. They're gonna like kind of like fall off, but I should still be able to get this particular shape here. So what I mean by is if I ungroup it and if I color it different color, you can kind of see. So that blue part will actually get cut out, which means I can still get a very intricate design actually cut out. But yeah, it's just something to remember that anytime you're working with radials, you've got to click on it and you've got to always make sure you go option and expand. And once you expand it, don't forget that you've also got to use combine. So this one, it just looks like a tire. That's really not that fancy, but yeah, you guys getting the idea hopefully with this. Like that's pretty much what you need to do when you're sending it to the laser cutter, especially working with radial patterns. You want to make sure that you are actually expanding the appearance, which is object, Sometimes it's sometimes expand appearance. So just have a play with it and then see what it actually does. Cool. That kind of covers some part of the radials that I've been playing around with. And I'm sure, as I said before, like if you look up, you're probably going to find like a lot more materials out there that are probably more efficient than what I've been doing so far. But you know what? This is what I've been learning with and just sharing what I've been doing to make things easy with that laser cutter. Cool. Moving on to the next part. Now, since we're actually doing this and we want to try and create like, let's say we want to try and create a earring, right? Like let's do a quick earring with a lovely looking radial design. Uh, yeah, that looks cool, but you know what? I'm going to flip it. Let's make that about 15. Too much. Let's go with that. I'm going to select that. I want to actually make that into a radial. So pattern, repeat, radial. Let's add a few more. Maybe adjust. Yeah, something like this. All right, now I want to actually put this on a circular earring, for example, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go object and I want to expand this. I don't want to cut this, right? Because the thing is, if I try and cut this, this is just going to be like super annoying because it ends up being like lots of little pieces getting cut out. So, oh, that's interesting. So now the issue is like, see, in this case, what we've got here is like a little stroke. And if I click on Pathfinder, that's not really what I want, even though it looks cool. What I wanted was like these shapes to kind of like pop up. So what I've got to do is like, even though I clicked on expand, I want to actually click on fill and stroke because now if I try and do Pathfinder, it's going to actually end up doing something like this. So let's try that again from the beginning, right? So what we've got is like, we've got the shape that's actually here. I go object, I'm going to go expand, object and fill. The problem is it's done it just as a stroke, which means I do it one more time, expand again, and this time I'm going to fill the stroke. And so now it's actually changed. So which means when I try and do Pathfinder, it's actually going to go join up together. Okay, my earring design is, I want a circular earring design. Basically, I want this circle to be about 40. I'm going to flip the colors there. So you can just swap colors here with this little button. And I'm going to change it to 40. Obviously, this thing is quite big. Let's change that to about 39. Obviously, these two things are like two separate things. I'm going to bring it together. So let's put that center, center, and we're going to click on center and center. And there we go, like nicely set up there. Now, I want a little hoop to go up here. So what I could do is I could just create another little circle here. And I guess this is where like learning the I always remember what's the purpose of learning Cartesian graphs is like, well, if you're designing this stuff, you want to make sure that you're putting in the center of that, right? Like, so what you could do is you could actually click on the circle and you want the center of this circle to be in the center there or something like that, right? Like that's what you're trying to do. Let's actually bring this down a bit more because I think it's too big. So let's drop it to about 35. There we go. So I want to bring that. See, I can move around with the mouse, but how would I know it's exactly in the center? So what you could do is you can actually figure out what this point is. So I click on that little point. That's 405, 205. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to put it at 405, 205. But the issue is that it's the reference point is at the top. So if I change this to the center and then put it back as 405 and 205, then it's going to fit in nicely there. So here's another little tip for you guys. If you want to create like a hoop inside of it, just Control C, which is copy, and then you click on Control Shift V, which pastes the image back on the same space. So if I reduce this to like, let's say 2, for example, you see that there's actually 2 circles that are placed in there. Now I'm going to select these 2 circles, as you can see that little grid there, and I'm going to do unite with Pathfinder. And there we go. It's as simple as that. That could be a keychain, that could be a earring, whatever you want. That's how fast you can actually do it. Now let's say you want to try and create like another shape. One of the shapes that I've been kind of quite interested recently, that's been the Penrose triangle, which is this one here. Like, you know, and I do want like a solid, like actually this one looks good. I'm gonna copy this image here, run an image trace on it. Not really what I want because it's a bit too fuzzy. Maybe this one here. No, this one here looks just to kind of like mess around with. Oh, definitely no. Don't use that. Yeah, kind of can see what's happening here. It's just a bit of like a guess and check here to try and figure out which triangle that I want to actually try and use. Let's try this one here. That looks good. Whoa, that is pretty huge as well. So let's drop it down to about 50 maybe. Yeah, there we go. So there's my image. I'm going to click on expand, click on the magic tool, delete this part. Now, here is where things get a little bit interesting. I'm going to take it to this empty space so you can see a bit more. Now what we've got is like we've got 3 little triangles, right? Now I want to create a border around it, a perfect border around it, not these like randomly guessing things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this image, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to keep that copy so that I know that I have a safe working one of it, right? So what I can do here is I click on object, and there is something called offset path. Now, if you think about offset path, it's like those stickers with the little white borders around them. Pretty much the same idea here. So I'm going to click on offset path, and notice how there's like a little thing that's going in the background. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can kind of get an idea of it. Yeah, pretty much that's what happens. So I'm going to put like a 1 mil border around my triangle. Maybe not 1 mil. Let's actually go 2 mils and see what that looks like. So it pretty much looks something like this. And I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to put a pathfinder to combine it all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because remember I had that copy of that original Penrose triangle, I'm going to click on Control Shift V, and I'm going to put it back in there, and I'm going to put that as white. So what I've literally done is I've actually created a little even kind of border. And notice how the border is actually in circle. That is something that I can change as well. So for example, I could have gone object, path, offset path, and I chose it to be round. Obviously not Milter. Bevel just looks a bit odd, and I guess that's why I went with round. There we go. So unite it, paste it, and I'm going to put that into white. I mean, you can kind of like tinker with it to whatever you want. Now I should be able to put a circle on it, like a little hoop. For let's say we want to move this to the center of it. There we go. That looks all right there. Obviously, I want that to be black for now, and I'm going to copy it. Control Shift V. Oh, sorry, I didn't copy the circle. Copy it. Control Shift V, and I'm going to change that to about 2 mils. So change that to 2 mils there on the H-axis. Then I should be able to just select the black and the outside, unite it again, and you're like, where did the other thing go? Well, it's actually in the back. That's all. So what I will show you guys is if I convert this all now and I change the stroke to, so let's get rid of the black and put that as red, and we want this one to red as well. So what we've got here is losing my voice, man. Yeah, I'm gonna put that as black. So basically the red part is going to get cut out, the black part is going to etch, and you've got a nice little funky little earring right there. That's with the Penrose triangle. What if you want to create something like, you want to create like a little stroke? So let's say we do something like this. Where is it? I don't know, something like that. And let's say we want to create it into a little Koru pattern, for example. Yeah, there we go. Just kind of like double click. Don't like that so much. Just gonna do it quickly here, guys, just to give you an idea. All right, let's stop there. So I could go into object and I could go into path, do an offset path, and suddenly I'm starting to get some really funky looking things here. So let's try that again. I'm going to go to path, offset path, maybe not 2 mils, maybe 1 mil. And yeah, I mean, like you can kind of like start getting some really cool designs there. But you can kind of see this and go, actually, this is not really that great. So you know what? I'm going to delete this and I'm going to chuck on some grid lines. So go into view and show grid. And here is where we're going to kind of use this. There's another little thing that you can do is like snap to grid. Because when you do that, your point gets snapped to those little grid points. And it's quite handy because like if you want to create like little funky little designs, then you can kind of follow that path and like you guys will see what I'm talking about here. There. Yeah, like see, I'm not getting good at this, am I? Terrible, man, terrible. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to do something very similar, but like no, I don't want, you know what? Let's try that again. We're gonna lock it. Let's try this one. This looks interesting. Notice I'm like double clicking, and by double clicking, I'm actually, oh, got an extra point there. Cool. So I'm going to leave this as a little design right here, right? And let's say I want to make that line a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to double click it and I'm going to make it about 5. Yeah, that looks good. The next thing I want to do with this is I want to be able to cut the outside. So once again, I've got to click on object, but this time instead of what do you call it? Offset part, you're going to create an outline stroke. An outline stroke, what it does is it creates this, like right now you can see like there's a blue line going in the middle, but if I click on outline stroke, the 2 blue lines actually go outside, which means I'm actually able to do something like this. And so I should be able to cut this piece out. Yeah, so it's just something quite handy to know, like if you are kind of like messing around with earrings, is that, there's just so much you could do with Illustrator that you can just play till you're happy with what you're trying to do, and then you should be good to go from there. All right, so we move on to the next thing. All right, guys, that is basically it for this video. I mean, hopefully it kind of covered most of the things that I wanted to cover for using Illustrator for our laser cutter at school. But yeah, like I know it's a long video and I do apologize about it, but it's just something that I just wanted to get done. And I know towards the end I kind of started losing my voice and cracking, but that is what it is. This is something that I did do on Illustrator. If you ask me how to do it again now, I probably have absolutely no idea. But it was just, it's been great fun learning this software. Definitely recommend it for you guys if any of you thinking about design, being a designer. It's a software that's super powerful to learn and just have it in the background as a if you are an illustrator or if you're an artist of some sort. It's really cool. Really enjoy it. But yeah, that's basically it for this video. As always, guys, if you do have any questions, drop it in the comments below, or send me an email. And if you're at school, just come and drop in at the design cave, and we'll try and figure out how to actually get your design to be work cut out or whatever it is. We'll try and figure it out. Cool. Thank you for watching. Catch you later.